Welcome to the Autonomic Healing Podcast. I'm Tom Pels.
And I'm Ruth Lorensson. We'll be unpacking what it looks like to activate your brain to holistically manage stress and trauma that bring healing to the mind, body, and spirit.
Being free to live authentically as humans.
Thank you for joining us. Let's get this conversation started. So we're continuing to talk about rational intimacy, and I'm excited about this conversation, Tom, because we've been going through all the stages, that in these past episodes of rational intimacy. The last one we talked about was envisioning, which is so crucial, I think, for the setting up of the stage of rational intimacy. But we're going to actually talk about rational intimacy today, like what does it look like when it's real, when it's happening. It's not just theory, but it's part of our lives, individually and collectively. So do you want to just kick us off there? I know we've got a few different dynamics that we're going to play around with in terms of understanding what it is, but also what are some of the challenges in actualizing it. So do you want to kick us off?
Yes. So this is the antithesis, the opposite experience from intimacy in the tsunami of stress. With the tsunami of stress, just very briefly reviewing, it begins with stress and need. And there's a fundamental human need for significance and worth and well-being. And we strive toward that. But when we can't manage or don't see stress and need as manageable, we don't perceive it as manageable, then that stress and need becomes distress and discontent. And the distress and discontent can escalate into avoidance and isolation. So now I'm not in relationship, although I may be having relationship. I'm not actually present, but I may be even interacting. And when that avoiding and isolating, if you don't deal with something, it doesn't get better. And then you get into resistance. I don't want to deal with this lack of the stress and need being unmet. Defiance. I'm not gonna. And then we get angry in some form or another. And then we are not assertive. And this is fundamental to rational intimacy, which is the opposite.
Yeah.
And I'm going to get into that in just a little bit with win and win or alternatives. And then we just want to feel good. What will make me feel good? What will make me feel good? Somebody else. But that may come at a price. My well-being, and I'm going to use you to achieve it. Except that self-gratification impulse, the desire and the need to feel good, where the stress and need was not managed or manageable, can leave a mark, because self-gratification is, I just feel good. And the fantasy of what will do that and the nature of the interaction of the relationship, which just makes me feel good, but that doesn't mean it's healthy. It just means I feel good.
Yeah, I mean, and last time, in the last episode, we talked a lot about fantasy, and this was like that stage. It was kind of either you envision, which is rational intimacy, or you end up being in this this fantasy, which is really based on self-gratification. And so, the opposite of rational intimacy is really founded in this fantasy.
It's tsunami of stress.
It's founded, and it's not win-win. It's someone's losing in a fantasy. Someone is somewhere.
Yes. So with rational intimacy, that begins with a sense of contentment. Is there stress? Yes. Is there need? Yes. Am I discontent? I don't have to be. And this is the significant role that homeostasis plays, which is that shift, that's that adjustment that is built into our very natures to adapt to changing situations.
Yeah.
For optimum function. And with AHA, we turn the homeostasis switch on, and it adjusts. And then we have a sense of contentment. Does that mean that the stress and need is gone from my life? No, that's dead. If you're alive, there's always stress and need.
Yeah.
Discontent? Don't have to be. So with rational intimacy, the paradigm, and we just happen to be talking in this episode about rational intimacy, the experience of it, it begins with that sense of contentment where, yes, there's stress, yes, there's need, but it's perceived as manageable. It's perceived as able to be dealt with. It's accepted. Yes, it's a tough time, but that doesn't mean I have to be unhappy about it. Doesn't have to be, I have to be reactive to that sensed or perceived threat to well-being. Does that mean I'm happy? Not necessarily, but it means I can have a sense of contentment, a sense of satisfaction, a sense of it's okay. And then that grows into the grace, the gifting, the emotional poise, and then can engage, connect, interact, be present. And then out of that, I have this sense of devotion. I'm on the team, and I play an individual role on the team. I play a role with the other team members, and it's the team. And then that love, that loyalty, that fidelity, that enthusiasm for a person or a cause can grow into, wow, what are the possibilities? Envisioning. What might this make possible? And then we live out the vision. Self-fulfillment, self-actualization. And I want to reiterate something that I'd shared in an earlier podcast. Self isn't a dirty word. Self is not a 4-letter word. Yeah. It's often viewed that way, but only because of the aberration that self can turn into. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I mean, we've covered this, haven't we? It's not, we're not talking about being self-obsessed or selfish centered. Or, it's actually loving ourselves well enough and, in a way where we're devoted to ourselves in a sober and healthy way, so that we can actually, out of that place, love others well and love our planet well. Without that start of loving ourselves, we really don't have the chance to do anything else.
Because in the tsunami of stress, self isn't healthy.
Yes.
And the relationship with self is unhealthy, so the relationship with others is equally unhealthy.
Yeah, I remember when we talked about the differences between, on one end of the spectrum, narcissists, and on the other end of the spectrum, people pleasers. And we were talking about the fact that in some ways it doesn't really matter because the core central issue is that they have a fragile self-esteem. They have different ways of figuring that out, but it's the same thing for both sides of that seesaw that we talked about.
So with rational intimacy, it's a win-win situation. It's human beings and the environment in which we live in. The environment can be a home. The environment can be a community. The environment can be the planet. But we live in an environment. No human being exists outside of an environment. There is always an environment in which we exist. And that is an internal one and an external one. And with homeostasis, they're both operating in a win-win situation. It's beneficial for me, it's beneficial for you. If it's beneficial for me and it's not beneficial for you, it's not actually beneficial for me.
So I think this is really this is such helpful language, Tom, because it helps us really understand what rational intimacy is and what it isn't.
Mm-hmm.
And when when I think about a lot of the world, it's not win-win.
No.
It's win-lose, lose-win, lose-lose a lot of the time. And someone's, I think that's what, again, that fantasy, which is based in self-gratification, when you live in such a way where really you're chasing after self-gratification and you're justifying it somehow.
And rationalizing and reframing.
Someone is losing. Or
yes.
And what we've seen with the environment is that the planet's losing because we are chasing after self-gratification and not understanding this concept of actually, there is a possibility here to live a life where there is win-win.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so I think it's so unusual. But that is what rational intimacy
Certainly
is.
not the norm, yes. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't mean it's not possible.
I mean, we talked about
it doesn't mean it can't happen. It just often doesn't.
And we talked earlier, just before we started this episode, we were chatting away. And we talked earlier about some of the big, giant kind of obstacles to rational intimacy, or maybe not obstacles, but the big fantasies that we've bought into as humanity. So we talked about how the slave trade and how just even
people owning other people. How long does that go back in history?
I mean, like, and I was saying to you, it's nuts to me that is like even a thing, but actually that wasn't that long ago, and people justified it, and they lived their lives in a perfectly normal way, owning another person.
One group dominating another group.
So we have a system where people think that, for some reason, people think that they are better, that certain groups are better than others. Instead of valuing human beings equally, we have systems, which is why it's never win-win, right?
Right. Mm-hmm. Because, and go back to the teeter-totter analogy that I use, the seesaw. Mm-hmm. Self is on one end, others are on the other, and equally valuing relationship with. That doesn't mean I have to agree with you. That doesn't mean we all have to share the same beliefs and values and all the rest of that. But it is rooted in beneficence. That it is beneficial for you and it is beneficial for me. That's how nature itself tends to work. Mm-hmm. A honeybee colony has an internal homeostatic harmony within the hive, and then that extends into the environment and pollination, and all sorts of things happen. Why? Because it's mutually beneficial. That's how nature itself functions. We've just excluded ourselves from being a part of nature.
And I think you mentioned this earlier. It's like the bees in a honeybee colony aren't all trying to be the queen bee.
No.
Like they're perfectly content
to
with
be who and what they are.
And then be part of an ecosystem that's beneficial, not just to them actually, but we know that having bees is incredibly beneficial to our planet.
We're killing them off pretty good, and then things don't grow. What?
So, excuse me. So apply that to society, life, community. I mean, it feels very different, doesn't it? Because we are not in...
Because human beings tend to be hierarchical. Better than. Superior to.
So is that...
Privileged in position and not.
And that's coming from...
a lack of homeostasis. Mm-hmm. Internal and external homeostasis.
And so okay... we're at this point where we've gone through the stages of rational intimacy, mm-hmm. and I want to talk about the challenges of, like we talked about this earlier, about again about I brought
because it's all connected.
Yeah, I brought up The Matrix. It's like almost the Matrix, the movie. It feels like I'm aging myself right now, but it feels like you take the pill,
the blue pill or the red pill.
and then
you
you
want to
start
know the truth, or you want to live in the fantasy.
I think that's what it is with rational intimacy. So you start seeing these opposite worlds. You start seeing the fantasy. You start actually thinking, oh my gosh, that's crazy. Like, why are we living like that?
Mm-hmm.
And then you start seeing the possibility of rational intimacy and another way. But what are some of the challenges there in entering into it? So it's not just
it's take the pill.
Yeah.
You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Deal with the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead with this one. One of the things, I work in the criminal justice system frequently. As a forensic psychotherapist, that comes up. I do mental health assessments and that sort of thing. There have been occasions over the past decades where, as an expert witness, I would be in a position to testify in a court of law. And the thing that really struck me, and I'm using the judicial system as an analogy to the system in which we all function, where things can harm even to the point that it breaks a law, and we've created things, and there are people who judge that, there are people who defend that, there are people who prosecute that. It's like the criminal justice system is this analogous body to society itself. We do that. That's why it's aspect of it. Anyway, one of the things that struck me is that when I would do expert testimony, as a witness, I would be sworn to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And what has always struck me as incredibly ironic is, as a witness, I'm the only one in the whole building who is sworn to deal with the truth. The judge doesn't have to. There is no swearing to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth as a judge. The defense attorney, the prosecution, they don't have to tell the truth. And that's our criminal justice system. My point is that that's like life and society.
Yeah.
If everybody in the courtroom had to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, trials, the entire judicial system would look radically different. It would actually function. And there would be justice. And in our society, if everybody had this fundamental commitment to the truth and spoke it in love, it would radically transform our society.
Wow.
Everybody dealing with the truth, not true more or less, not relabeled truth, but truth. For what it is, the facts. This is the way things are. Let's just deal with it. Then we can have rational intimacy. Mm-hmm. Because the best you can ever achieve with that is irrational intimacy. And that's the tsunami of stress. That's self-gratification, and that's lose-lose. Okay. With the teeter-totter, self and valuing relationship with self, equally with valuing relationship with others, is essentially loving your neighbor as yourself and valuing that relationship. That's a win-win situation. What is beneficial for you is beneficial for me. Not what I think is beneficial for me because I win. Mm-hmm. And if you lose, okay. But I gotta win. Or the opposite, where you win and I lose, and that's a passive position. I win, you lose, that's the aggressive position. Mm-hmm. I lose, you win, that's the passive position. The passive-aggressive one is, I'm not sure who's going to win and who's going to lose in this, but we're both not going to win. Mm. And we'll just trade winning and losing.
So what we're talking about here is being able to tell the truth on who's winning, who's losing.
Yes. Yeah. What is beneficial?
What is actually happening here?
Yes. Mm-hmm. And so with a win-win position, what is beneficial for you is beneficial for me. If it's not beneficial for you, it's not beneficial for me. And if it's beneficial for me but not beneficial for you, it's not actually beneficial to me. I might really like it and appreciate it and prefer it, but it's destroying the environment that we live in. Whether that is a home or a family or a friendship or a relationship or a community or the entire planet that we live on. This is about what is beneficial for self is beneficial for others and vice versa. That allows for self-fulfillment, self-actualization. In the APA dictionary, the self-actualization is defined as a noun. The complete realization of that of which one is capable. And that's that envisioning. What am I capable of? And living that out, involving maximum development of abilities and full involvement in and appreciation for life, particularly as manifest in those peak experiences or those moments where we're in the zone and things are harmonious and working well. The term is associated especially with Abraham Maslow, who viewed the process of striving toward full potential as fulfillment, as fundamental, yet obtainable only after the basic needs of physical survival, safety, love, and belongingness and esteem are fulfilled. And Carl Rogers was the opposite side of the coin. You got one coin, and you've got Abraham Maslow on one side, and that is that self-realization, self-actualization in relationship with self. Rogers just extended that and focused it on self in community and the environment and the external. So from a homeostasis perspective, Maslow would be homeostasis with self. Rogers would be homeostasis with others and the environment. Put them both together.
They both need to happen. Yeah.
Yes, it's not an either or.
But you can't, in some ways though, you can't, would you say that you can't actually have the homeostasis with the environment without having the homeostasis?
Yes,
so it
because
starts
we're consistent.
We
tend to be consistent and predictable in the way we do relationships. And we do that with ourselves. We do that with others. It can be a goal. It can be a vision that this is about homeostasis, well-being, things operating in optimum ways within self and without self, outside of self, because both are the reality in which we live in.
Can we just talk about I think this is just a really helpful way of talking about it if we talk about the environment, because it's like we're talking about how do we acknowledge the truth of what's happening. So there's things that why don't we acknowledge the truth? Maybe we're ignorant, maybe we're turning a blind eye, maybe we're fearful of losing our fantasy. I mean, I would imagine there's a few different things in the mix there. But
power, control, who has it, who doesn't.
And so
have
with the environment, for example, I think this is something you said earlier, with kind of just even the way we're trashing the planet, right? If we did that in our backyard, if we just dumped all of our garbage in our backyard. Or in our own homes. Yeah. We have
trash cans for a reason. We don't just have trash all over the house. We don't put our garbage anywhere.
I mean, just anywhere. Because the reality is, if we did do that, it would be a nonsense. We would be like, of course we're not going to do that. It wouldn't be a
livable space.
But we're doing that across the planet.
Of course we are.
So
that's reflective of what human beings often do in their internal environment.
So I just think that's a key. Like, what are the dynamics at play there? Why are we doing that? Like, is that ignoring the truth of the situation? Like, how do we get out of that cycle?
I want my needs met. I want to manage my stress. And if that comes at a cost to others or the environment, so be it.
So that's a win-lose situation.
That is a win-lose situation. Yes. Or it could be, well, if I help others win, then I win. But that's just them winning. That's not me winning. That's just others winning.
I mean, and so that's why I think with, some of the sustainability initiatives that we're seeing at the moment with the planet, it is that they're based on win-win. They're based on, actually, we can actually enjoy our lives. We can have some things if we make them with these materials, if we embrace circular economy, if we recycle, if which I love, and I find that whole space very innovative. But that's what sustainability is really going after, that win-win with the planet. So let's move that idea, and how do we do this in relationships and community?
It's just the same philosophy. It's the same perceptual base that is about who and what is this beneficial to. And if it is not mutually beneficial, it is not individually beneficial. I may like it. I may be able to reframe that it's benefiting me, but ultimately it comes at a cost. Pre-Civil War, owning other human beings. There was one class of people, those who owned the people. Life's good. This is wonderful. Those who were providing for all of that, not so great. No. It's the same paradigm. It's win-win. Beneficial for me is beneficial for you. Beneficial for you is beneficial for me. If it's not mutually beneficial, it is not beneficial. That's a fundamental philosophical. That is, love your neighbor as yourself.
So,
and if that extends into a more transcendent, where it's God or spirit or whatever, love, mutuality.
I think one of the things I'm thinking about, Tom, is when you start living in that way, you start seeing it. You start seeing the contrast. You start living in that way. It's really the dominant way. I think it is more the kind of tsunami of stress, the fantasy, and so and you're really kind of going against the grain with.
Totally, it's a paradigm shift. It is not the prevalent human-wide ethos. But it doesn't mean we don't want that. And it doesn't mean we don't participate in that. It doesn't mean we don't encourage that.
I think that's crazy. That's the crazy thing about it, because deep down, even though human beings all over the planet, a lot of them are living in this kind of power and control and fantasy and, win, lose, win type of way. I think deep down in most human beings, there is a longing to live harmoniously in a beneficial environment. I think that we do have that in us.
The problem is the way we perceive the mind. And that's why I talk about seemingly rational perceptions as opposed to actually rational perceptions. If you think about it, why wouldn't you want maximum development of abilities? Who's going to argue against that? Education, physical health, well-being, maximum development of abilities, and full involvement in and appreciation for life. You going to argue against that?
No.
Particularly as it manifests in those moments where it's harmony and things are operating well. I have a sense of well-being. You have a sense of well-being. We together share a sense of well-being. Yeah.
Mm.
It can be win-win. There's no reason for it not to be win-win. And my argument would be, if it isn't win-win, nobody wins.
Mm.
I may think I win because I have power, or I have control, or I have status, or I have affirmation of my culture and my belief system and all that. And you don't. But we all inhabit this space together.
And so
we don't.
What we're really talking about here is an invitation to embrace the truth and then live out of that space towards...
With love.
Yeah, with love, towards a win-win.
Yes.
Dynamic an environment with other human beings, with our planet.
Yep. And why don't we do that? Because we sense or perceive a threat to well-being, and we get into flight or fight.
Mm-hmm. So someone's going to take something from me. I've got to hold on to my thing.
I'm going to lose something. I'm going whatever the irrationality is.
I think that's the jump for people, because that's what keeps... Because I think what tends to happen is you can kind of go through rational intimacy and you can think about it and it can stay in your head. As soon as you start living it out, it's so against the grain of whatever else is going on. It's almost like there's a doubling. I experience sometimes a doubling down.
Of course, because that's the escalation of the tsunami of stress.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Distress and discontent. Why? Because stress and need. I have perceived or I sense a threat to well-being. I may be able to articulate it. I may not even be able to articulate it. But because I perceive a threat to well-being, and frequently with human beings, it's just the perception of threat that doesn't actually even exist. Think with post-traumatic stress disorder. That Vietnam War vet who is in a bunker and the rocket hit the bunker and people died and that sort of thing. And he comes to my office for his AHA session and he's having a panic attack because of my desk lamp. Is my desk lamp an actual threat? No. Was he sensing it as a threat? Yes, because that hadn't been resolved. It did get resolved and I had a nice desk lamp and he wasn't having a panic attack because the brain is the therapist. That's bottom line. Mm-hmm. The way we naturally exist and working with that, rather than trying to make it be something that we want it to be, letting it be what it is and letting it function naturally, it restores homeostasis. And then that gets extended. That's what rational intimacy is. It's fundamentally an experience of homeostasis. Within self, external to self, interrelationship.
That's so good. So as we wrap up this conversation, I'm just curious what for people who've been listening and tracking with us and maybe they're going after the truth, that they're like, actually, I want to live in rational intimacy. What would your advice be to them as they continue? And maybe they're feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm, like not everyone thinks the same way. I'm seeing things differently. Like, what advice would you give to them as we wrap up this conversation?
Be willing to consider that what you sense or perceive as a threat may not actually even exist. Just to start with. And then be willing to deal with the truth. Not simply things that are true, but the truth. And deal with it in love and speak that, share that, engage in that from a perspective of mutually beneficial. Mm-hmm. Beneficial to me, beneficial to you. because anything other than that is not beneficial to anybody.
And that, when it's mutually beneficial, that really is what rational intimacy is.
That's homeostasis.
You've been listening to the Autonomic Healing Podcast.
Join us next time as we continue in our conversations with Tom. If you're interested in pursuing your own autonomic healing journey and want to find a practitioner, visit our website, innerworkings.org. See you at the next episode.